All right, here we are, day 2 of solving absolute value equations. We're going to start off today with a little review from yesterday. So we're going to solve this equation. Now remember, absolute value means distance from 0. So we have to consider both the positive and negative possibilities for answers. In other words, what's inside here, remember, could be equal to 8 or negative 8, since the absolute value of 8 equals 8 and the absolute value of negative 8 equals 8. And so we're going to write two equations. We're going to write the first possibility, what's inside there equals 8, and we have the second possibility, what's inside there equals negative 8. So solving each of these, we're going to get 2x equals 11. Dividing both sides by 2, we get x equals 11 halves, or maybe write 5.5. That's one answer. The other answer, we're going to add 3 to both sides. We get 2x equals negative 5. Divide both sides by 2. And we get x equals negative 5 halves, or negative 2.5. So again, like we learned yesterday, we have to consider two possible answers. Now, the problems today are slightly more complicated. And what you might notice is we've got the absolute value, but we've got the absolute value with other things on one side. And here is the most important thing you're going to learn today. And that is, I'm going to put it right here. You must get absolute value by itself on one side first. In other words, we can't look at this and say, oh, the absolute value equals a negative, we have no solution. No, the absolute value is not by itself on one side. We need to get the absolute value by itself on one side. Then, only then can we consider our two answers. So step 1 here is to add 10 to both sides. Then we have absolute value of 3x plus 9 equals 6. Now is when we say, oh, okay, so if the absolute value equals 6, what's inside here could be 6 or negative 6. So notice, again, we have to isolate that absolute value on one side first. So now we can write 3x plus 9 equals 6, or 3x plus 9 equals negative 6. Solving each of these, we get 3x equals negative 3, and x equals negative 1. So that's one answer. Or on the other side, we get 3x equals negative 15, divide both sides by 3, or x equals negative 5. So those are our two answers. How about you try this one now? You can pause it and play it in a minute. But we have to get rid of, or get the absolute value by itself on one side first. Now that we have absolute value by itself equals 4, now we can look for our two answers. What's inside could equal 4 or negative 4. Solving, we get x equals 6, or x equals negative 2. Here's a couple more examples. Is the absolute value by itself on one side? No, we got to get rid of that thing. So it's connected by multiplication. We're going to divide. We're not going to distribute. Do not distribute into the absolute value. All right, so dividing both sides by 4. Now our absolute value is by itself. Now we can write 2x plus 7 equals 4, or 2x plus 7 equals negative 4. Subtracting 7 from both sides, 2x equals negative 3. Dividing both sides by 2, x equals negative 3 halves, or negative 1.5. This one, subtracting 7 from both sides. Oops, I switched colors. Let's see, we are going to get negative 11, dividing both sides by 2, x equals negative 11 halves, or negative 5.5. All right, last problem here. Same thing, we got to get rid of that negative 2. So we're going to divide both sides by negative 2. And when we do that, we have our absolute value by itself on one side. And notice it now equals positive 4, so that's fine. Now we can write our two equations. Negative 4, solving each side. We get x equals 1, solving each side here. We get 5x equals negative 3, dividing both by 5. X equals negative 3/5. When we find our two solutions, it's not always perfect, right? Because when we consider the positive answer and the negative answer, things don't always work out perfectly. But that's to be expected. So again, the most important thing we learned today is right here. Remember, you must isolate the absolute value on one side before looking for the two solutions. So please remember that. Students have a problem with that. So if you do that, you should be fine.